Hello there, I'm Sonia and I welcome you back to my channel Grammar Forward. Today we are going to begin a series of lessons on verb tenses. And in today's lesson, we will focus on present simple tense. Generally speaking, we use present simple tense to talk about general facts and permanent situations. Let me give you an idea of how a verb in present simple tense looks like. You know that in English, in order to make a sentence, we need to have a subject and a verb. So here on the board, you will find that on this side, I've written subject and here I've written verb. So as an example, I've taken eat as a verb. In English, we have three persons. We have first person, second person and third person. I and we are first person. I is first person singular and we first person plural. You can be both second person singular and plural. They is third person plural, and below that you have he, she and it, which are third person singular forms. So you can see how we are using the verb eat with each one of them. With I, we have eat, we eat, you eat, they eat. But below that, you have he eats, she eats, it eats. Here, it may be, I'm talking about a cat. The cat eats. So you can see that I, we, you, and they take the same verb form. We have I, we, you, they eat. But he, she, and it, the singular pronouns, take eats. So there's a change here in the verb. You have the verb with S. We will talk about that in detail in a minute. Now let us find out when is present simple tense used. Generally speaking, present simple tense is used in 5 situations. The first one is when we talk about permanent situations. Now what I mean by the word permanent is something which doesn't last for a short while. Something which is more or less always true. So for example, when I say they live in Singapore, they don't live there for a few days. This is something which is more or less permanent. I work as a doctor. Somebody doesn't work as a doctor for a few days or a few weeks. So when you talk about a job, we use present simple tense. Number 2, scientific facts or truth. So when we are describing something which is true scientifically, we have to use present simple tense. For example, when I say water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, I'm talking about something which I cannot change. This is a part of science. So I use water boils, not water is boiling. The same way you have human body contains 206 bones. This is also something which is scientific. So I have to use present simple tense there. Number 3, when we talk about some kind of schedules or timetables or plans. So when I'm talking about when a flight or a train arrives, I say the train arrives at 10 a.m. I don't say the train is arriving at 10 a.m. The lesson starts at 9 a.m. It's a part of a plan. It's a part of a timetable. Number 4, when we talk about states. Now, what do I mean by the word states? You know that there are different kinds of verbs. We have action verbs and state verbs. We already had a session on verbs, and if you haven't watched that session, I recommend you to watch that video. So when we are talking about verbs that imply some kind of states, we need to use present simple tense. Look at this example. I say she hates cooking, not she is hating cooking. Maybe I want some coffee now, but I don't say I'm wanting some coffee now. I say I want some coffee. So you can see that Hate and want are state verbs. It's not an action verb. When I talk about drink or eat or sleep, I'm talking about an action. It starts at a point and it ends at a point. But this goes on, it's not an action, it goes on in your mind, and we cannot use these verbs in the ing form. And the fifth one is we use it to talk about habits and routines. Let's read the first example which is given on the board together. He often spends the summer days at the beach. Did you notice the use of this word often? This word often is an adverb of frequency, and we have different adverbs of frequency in the English language. So if we are to list all the adverbs of frequency according to the percentage of frequency, then it will go like this. Assuming that never is 0% and always means 100%, sometimes will fall in the middle with a 50%, and in between you have all of these adverbs of frequency. So here we have never, rarely, seldom, occasionally, sometimes, often, generally, usually, and always. So these are the adverbs of frequency and they show how often an action is done. Now let's read a second sentence. She visits her brother every Sunday. You might have noticed this word here, every Sunday. This is not an adverb of frequency, but it's an expression of frequency. And we have other expressions of frequency in our language, like you have once or twice a week or month or year. You have every summer holiday or every year. So when this word every appears with another word, we have that expression of frequency. You have on Sundays or on weekends or on Fridays. You have from time to time. This is another expression of frequency. So if you are writing an exam and if you have a question in which you are not sure which tense to use, and if you find one of these adverbs of frequency or the expressions of frequency there in that sentence, you can very well go for present simple tense, because these words function as keywords and they tell you that simple present tense is to be used. Now let's move on to the next part of our lesson. How is it used? We already know when we use present simple tense. How is it used? What is its form? Let's talk about that now. For that, I've arranged the board in such a way that we have 3 columns here. One is for positive, the next is negative, and the third one is for questions. Yes or no questions. Now let's have the same verb eat as an example. So how do we form the positive sentence with I, we, you and they? We have eat. We use the base form of the verb eat. So we have I eat, we eat, you eat, they eat, my friends, plural, eat, Tom and Jerry eat, and for these ones, he, she, it, we have eats. You know that these are singular and here the verb has to take an S. So what do? We just add an S here. That's it. So whenever we have a singular subject, whether it is he, she, it or a person's name, Tom or Mary, we say eats. I hope it's clear to you now. So when it is plural, the verb without S. When it is singular, when the subject is singular, we have the verb with S. Now let's see how the negative is formed. In English, we use the word not to make something negative. Thus, in this case, should I say, I not eat or I eat not to make this negative? It doesn't sound right, right? So what should we do? In this case, we have 2 helping verbs which are ready to help us. Which are they? We have do and does. And we have to choose the right helping word for each case. Now let's focus on the plural subject. So when we had I, we, you, they, my friends, or anything plural, how did we use the verb? Without S. So when we make the negative, should we take the help of do or does? Remember, here no S. So we will go for do. So what is the negative? We say do not eat. So do not eat, and the short form of that is don't eat. We just make it contracted. So we have don't eat. So we say I don't eat. We do not or don't eat. You, they, my friends don't eat. All of us don't eat. We can say do not eat, but in the spoken English, it's easier to say don't eat, and it's more natural to say don't eat. Use the short form or the contracted form. And now when we move on to the singular subject, we used the verb with S. So that means here we have to go for does. So here we are going to take the help of does. So here we have he or she or it doesn't eat. And the short form of does not is, as I told you, doesn't. How do we get that? We just remove the O and we put an apostrophe here to show that the O has been removed. You make them together. So we have the contracted form doesn't. So I hope now it is clear for you. When we have the plural subject, we have don't. And for the singular subject, when we talk about something which is one, we say doesn't. Now the next question is, how do we form the question form using present simple tense? When we talk about questions, we have two kinds of questions. One is questions for which we have the answer yes or no. And we also have WH questions. Now let's focus on the questions which take the answer yes or no. Now the positive is I eat, the negative is I do not eat. So we have I do eat or I do not eat. And in order to make the question, you just change the order, the word order. So you have do I eat, not I do eat. Do I eat? Do they eat? So you know that for the plural subjects, we don't have doesn't, we have do, do not. Use the same do and change the word order. You have do I eat, do you eat, and so on. And when we have the singular subject, you know that we use does. So use the same does and we have does he eat, does she eat, does Sarah eat, and so on. Now let's take up the second type of questions called WH questions. How do we form WH questions with the help of present simple tense? Before that, let's try to know what are WH questions. Questions formed with the help of WH words are called WH questions. And what are the WH words? We have who, why, when, where, how long, how often, how many, how much, and so on. All of those are words which help us to form WH questions. So here I have an example for you. She eats fruits. You know that this is a positive sentence. She eats. How do we make the question? Does she eat fruits? Does she eat fruits? After does, we don't use eats. And how do we make the WH question for this sentence if you want fruits as the answer? You know that fruits is a thing, it's an object. So we have to use the question word what. So the question is, what does she eat? So what did I do here? You have the yes or no question here. Does she eat? I just added the word what in front of that question. So you have what does she eat? In the same way, you have another example. They eat at noon. What is the question form? Do they eat? You already have the yes or no question. Do they eat? And if I want a WH question to be asked for which the answer is at noon, which word will we use? We are talking about a time, so we use the word when. So we have when do they eat? So what did I do there? You have the question for yes or no answer. Do they eat? I just added that word, the question word when, in front of that. So you have when do they eat? Let's now see how the spelling of a verb changes when we use it in the present simple tense. Thankfully, for most of the verbs, we just have to add the letter S. So here we have the examples: comes, drinks, sleeps, and so on. But when the verb ends in SH or double S or CH or X or double Z, we have to add ES. It's not just S, it's ES. So for example, we have catch becomes catches, we have washes and buzzes. Can you guess why we have to add that ES? In this case, we just say comes, but here we say catches. So you can hear that sound there, catches. In order to pronounce it easily, we have to add the letter E. Then, for the verbs that end in a consonant plus Y, you have to add IES. What do you mean by this word consonant? We know that there are 26 alphabets in the English language, and out of these 26, 5 are vowels. We have the vowels A, E, I, O, and U, and the rest of the alphabets are called consonants. So when a word ends in a consonant plus Y, we have to add IES. So cry becomes cries. You remove the Y and you add IES. The same happens with carry. It becomes carries with IES at the end. But when a verb ends with a vowel and Y, you have to add only S. So pay becomes pays, say becomes says, enjoy becomes enjoys, and so on. And also we have some irregular verbs like have. So you say, I have a brother, but she has. So have becomes has, go becomes goes. You just have to add ES there. It ends in an O, but we have to add ES. And do becomes does. We also have the verb be, but we will keep it for another lesson. Now let's pause for a while and have some practice. You have a sentence here. Alan works at the bank. You can see that this is a positive sentence. How do you make the negative of this? You say Alan. You can see that the verb comes with an S here, so we have to use does. So Alan doesn't work at the bank. You can see that I removed the S from here. The next is a yes or no question. How do we form that? Here you have does. So we use the same does here. Does Alan work at the bank? So again, we removed the S. No more S here. How do we form a WH question here so that I have the answer as the bank, at the bank? We are talking about a place. So we have to use the word where. Where, use the same thing. Where does Alan work? Again, no more S. So here, where do you find the S with the base form? We have Alan works. Only here you can find the S with the verb. In all other places, I have removed the S and used the helping verb does or doesn't. Now it's time to have some fun spotting the errors. I've given here 6 sentences, and in each of these sentences you will find some mistake. In fact, here you will find most of the common mistakes people make while using present simple tense. Let's begin with the first sentence. I'm having 2 brothers. Are you able to find the mistake in this sentence? The verb we have used is am having. Have is a state verb, and you know that we cannot use a state verb in the continuous form. No ing here should be used. So The mistake is here we are going to use have. I have two brothers. It's a state verb which shows possession or relation. Number two, my parents are living in Kuwait. Here we are talking about a permanent situation. So there's no need to use the ing form. It should just be my parents live in Kuwait. And in sentence number 3, or rather question number 3, we have where you work. I believe you know that a very important word is missing here. Something is wrong with the form because the auxiliary verb or the helping verb is not given there. So we must use where do you work, not does. It is do because here the subject is you. For you we use the helping verb do. Number 4, does they play football often? What is wrong here? The subject is they, so we shouldn't have does. It should be do. Just do. Do they play football often? So the form was wrong there also. Number 5, she don't speak French. We are talking about somebody, she, singular. So is it she don't or she doesn't? It should be doesn't. I can hear you saying that answer there. So it should be she doesn't speak French. And the last one, we are traveling to India every summer. You can see the expression of frequency there. We have used every, and I told you that whenever you find a word like every or any adverb of frequency, we are sure that we have to use the present simple form. So it should be not we are traveling, we travel to India every summer. I hope now you are ready to use the present simple tense and that you know how to use the positive, the negative, the question forms using this tense. If you enjoyed the class and if you benefited from it, please do subscribe to my channel if you're here for the first time. And please don't forget to click the notification bell so you know when my next lesson is. See you in the next session. Goodbye until then. Take care and stay safe.